our first lesson when we had the place, we're going to bring it back in this lesson. So you can put 1,000s, starting from right to left. 1,000s, 100s, tenths, our decimal point. Then you have ones, tenths, not tenths, tens. There's a difference. Hundreds and thousands. Of course, your place value can go up until infinity, but for this lesson, we are going to stop at thousands. Remember, there's a difference between thousands and thousandths. If it has the THS at the end, then you know that we're talking about decimals. It is no longer a whole. So make sure that you are paying attention to these two because there is a difference with them. Now we're going to look at it just like what we've been talking about with comparing place values. So we said that when you go from left to right, we notice that our place values, they are decreasing. And they're decreasing by 10 because we are dividing by 10. And if you were to do it on your own, you would see that 1,000 divided by 100, 1,000 divided by 10 is equal to 100. And if you keep on dividing, you will see. So when you go from left to right, your place values, they are decreasing. And then when you go from right to left, your place value, they're going to increase. But if you look from right to left, you will notice that your place value, they're going to increase, because if you go from 1,000 to 100, you know that once you compare them, 100ths is better, not better, 100ths is greater than 1,000ths. And then keep on going to the right, tenths is greater than 100ths. Even though in your denominator, in all of these, you will see that you have 10 in your denominator for tenths. Then you have hundredths in your denominator for hundredths. Then you have thousand in your denominator for thousands. Even though technically these numbers, they are increasing, meaning that 100 is greater than 10 and 1,000 is greater than 100. But because it's located in your denominator, it means that they are less. So that's something to always remember. Now we are going to look at how we would place numbers in our place value chart. So if I have this, for instance, if I have 0, and one thing I didn't mention, this decimal point, we're not going to call it decimal. We are going to call it and. So if you have 0 and, let's say we put 2 right here, 0 and 2, what we will call it is 0 and 2 tenths, because if you notice, this 2 is now in the tenths place. So that's why we will call it 0 and 2 tenths. Now, if you had this 0.27, as how we normally would, in word form, it will be 0 and 27, because now you're chunking it. This number is 27. But the place value that the last digit is in, that's the place value we would call. So we would say it is 0 and 27 hundredths, because that 7 is now in the hundredths place. Let's look at another one. What if we have this? How we would say this in word form is 0 and 35 hundredths. Or you can simply say 35 hundredths, because the 0, we can ignore it because there are no ones. You can just say 35 hundredths. Now, pay attention to this, because if you have this, that's a little different. You would say 351 thousandths, because that 1 is in the thousandths place. But here's what I want you to pay attention to. Let me erase this. I'm erasing this number because now I want you to see that there's a difference between 35 hundredths and this number that's down here. There's a zero in your tenths, but we would say there are no tenths because that zero, it doesn't count. There are no tenths. So the way we would say this number is 0 and 35 thousandths, because this 5 is now in the thousandths place, but there's a 0 right here, so it moved over. So here's what I want you to pay attention to. If there's a 0 in front of your number, then that 0 is of no value. Okay, the 0 is of no value. But if there is a 0 right here, there are two ways that you can say it. You can say 350 thousandths, or you can say 35 hundredths. This does not change the value. The 0 right here does not change the value of this whole number right here. But this 0 right here, it does change the value. So, correction. If there is a 0 in front of your number, yes, it is of no value, but you would say it differently than how you would say this. Because the 0 after the number, it does not change the value of this 35 hundredths or 350 thousandths. It doesn't change the value of that. But it does, a 0 in front of your number, it does change the value of this number right here because it moved over a place value, and this 5 is now in the thousandths place. So you would say it is 35 thousandths, not 35 hundredths. And if you can remember, we said earlier that thousandths is less than 100. Just because you see thousand doesn't mean that it's necessarily going to be more, because there is this THS right here at the end of it to show that it is a decimal number and it is less than a whole. And also this thousands right here is telling you that it's less than 100, and it's also less than tenths. All right, so that is something that you should always remember. Now we are going to compare these place values. So if we have all of these numbers and we said that we are going to compare them, we have to make sure that we are putting them in the correct place value, and also that we are comparing digit by digit. You start from left to right, and then you would compare it digit by digit. So now let's look at the first one. You have 0 and 27 hundredths. Okay, the second one, you have 0 and 35 hundredths or 35 thousandths. Then you have 0 and 35 thousandths. Did I say 35 for the first one? No, it is actually 350 thousandths, because you see this number right here. If you chunk it, you will see that it's 350, not 35. That was a mistake. All right, so when you are comparing them, you can use your place value as well as you don't have to use your place value. I can show you how you would do this without using the place value. So compare it from left to right. First, you go digit by digit, place value by place value. So you compare this 0 to this 0 to this 0. And you will see that there's nothing going on here. So now you can move to the next place value. Here you have 2. You have actually 2 tenths, 3 tenths, 0 tenths. If you were to compare from least to greatest, you would say that this is the least, that's the second one, and that's the third one. Once you find something that is less or greater, no matter where you are, you can stop there and then you can compare them. So you can say that this number is now going to be the first least. That's 35 thousandths is going to be the first least. 27 hundredths is going to be the second one that's less. And then the last one, which is greater than all of them, is going to be 3,500 or 350,000. If we were to ignore these numbers over here, if we were to ignore these, then you can see that now you have 2,700s, 3,500s, and 300s. Compare them. You see that 3 is less than 27, 27 is less than 35. So that's how we would compare them.